There is a moment before music begins that is not silence, not really. It feels like silence to the ears, but the soul knows better. It is the stillness that holds everything. The hush before the first note. The pause where anticipation gathers itself. If you've ever been in a concert hall just before the orchestra plays, or stood in a forest just before the dawn chorus, you've felt it. The air shifts. There's a tension, not of anxiety, but of fullness, a readiness. You feel in your body that something beautiful is already present, even though you haven't heard a thing. That moment, that listening stillness, is where the gospel lives. Jesus says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." At first, it sounds like a deal, a transaction. Love leads to obedience, a cause and an effect. But I wonder, what if that's not what he's doing at all? What if Jesus isn't laying down a condition, but describing a song? What if he's not issuing a rule, but naming a rhythm, a pattern already unfolding beneath our lives, waiting not to be obeyed, but to be heard? There's a way of listening to this verse that doesn't place us under judgment, but invites us into alignment. Not if you love me, prove it by obeying, but rather, if you truly see me, if you love me, you will walk this way, because you won't be able to do otherwise. Not out of pressure, out of resonance, out of harmony. Let's shift the metaphor for a moment. Imagine standing in a quiet forest, not hurrying, not thinking about anything really, and slowly your perception changes. You start to hear things you weren't listening for, birds, wind, the rustle of leaves. You begin to see the trees, not as scenery, but as alive, present. You feel that something sacred is here, not because it announces itself, but because you finally slowed down enough to notice. That recognition is what we'll call love, not the kind of love that burns hot and fast, not the kind that demands or takes, but the love that is really a way of seeing, a spiritual clarity, a softening of the heart to what has always been true. God is here. And then, without being told, your behavior changes. You step more lightly. You speak less. You begin to move with reverence. That shift isn't forced. No one gave you a list of rules for how to behave in a forest. You're just responding to what you now see. That response, that gentle movement of your life in accordance with what you've perceived, is obedience. Not obedience as compliance, but obedience as congruence, as resonance. The outer shape of your life begins to match the inner truth you've come to see. And then something happens. The forest seems to respond. It's subtle. Not a voice, not a vision, but a presence, a harmony. You sense that you're not alone, that somehow your seeing and your moving have allowed something deeper to reveal itself, that something is Christ, not as an object, not as a character waiting off stage, but as the resonance that arises when love and alignment come together. That's the triad love, obedience, Christ. Not in sequence, not in hierarchy, in harmony, each one confirming the others, each pair revealing the third. When we love, we see Christ more clearly, and when we see Christ, obedience flows. When we obey with joy, we discover a deeper love, and round it goes, not a circle, but a song. This is why Jesus says, "You will keep my commandments." Not you should, not you must. You will. Because when you finally begin to see, when the love of Christ begins to illuminate the world around you, you can't help but begin to walk differently. You begin to move in time with a melody that has always been playing, even if you couldn't hear it before. And the commandments, they're not burdens to be carried, they're not boxes to check, they are the melody line of that song. They describe how reality moves when it's healthy, when it's whole. They're not outside of you shouting directions, they're inside of you waiting to be remembered. This changes everything. It means obedience is no longer about fear, no longer about punishment. It is about harmony. It is about walking in step with the music of the kingdom. And love. It's not just a feeling we try to muster on holy days. It's a way of seeing, a clarity of perception. And Christ, he's not a far-off judge evaluating your performance. He is the presence that emerges when love and obedience find their tune. So perhaps the question is not, am I doing enough for God? Perhaps the question is, can I hear the music? Can I hear the song of Christ beneath my busyness, beneath my striving, beneath the static of shame and comparison? If the answer is no, don't panic. The music is still playing. You have only to be still long enough to hear the first note, and then watch what happens. Love will begin to rise in you. Your steps will change. And in that alignment, Christ will become not just someone you worship, but someone you recognize in the faces of your neighbors, in the quiet of your prayer, in the very rhythm of your life. You see, Jesus isn't asking us to earn something. He's inviting us to remember something, to notice what has been true all along. So I leave you with this, not a challenge, but an invitation. What if Christ is not far off, waiting for your obedience, but already here, waiting for your attention? What if the commandments are not hurdles to leap, but harmonies to join? And what if your love, your alignment, your obedience were not things you must strive to create, but music that is already rising in you, waiting only for you to sing?